my one biggest takeaway, having been a financial advisor for over 20 years, is when you're retiring, never do the following 5 things or you're done. And the first one is, do not retire if you're married without having a serious conversation with your spouse and talking about what does retirement look like to the 2 of you, and what are you hoping to get out of the retirement phase? Where are you hoping to live? How are you looking to spend your days? You've probably most people, we're apart 5 days a week, we're at work. By the time we get home, we really only have a couple hours with our spouse, and now all of a sudden, there's 7 days a week, and that can be a lot of time for people to go from, maybe spending 15 hours a week together to potentially 168 hours a week. That's a big, big thing, so have that conversation. Get on the same page as much as you can before you retire. Kinda related to that is to test drive your budget, your spending budget, before you tell your boss you're gonna retire. Let's say that you're currently spending $8,000 a month, I'm just tossing out a number, and you think in retirement you're gonna cut that back to $6,000 a month, which is in the ballpark of what I see. But for some people, that 6,000 a month feels like a lot of money, and that's great. It doesn't feel sacrificial at all. But for other people, they say, "You know what, Azul? I'd rather I'd rather keep working a little bit longer so I can keep spending $8,000 a month." And it's best to figure that out before you tell your boss you're gonna retire rather than after. So how do you test drive your budget? Admittedly, if the game plan is that you're gonna move states or move overseas, there's some things that are hard to practice, to test drive before you retire, but do the best that you can. If you're thinking of moving overseas, maybe you could work remotely from there for 2 weeks and be on vacation for 2 weeks and live there for a month. Same thing, if you're thinking about moving to, let's say, Florida or Southern California, or Texas, whatever the location is, or, Cleveland, Ohio, whatever on your wish list. Try to spend some quality time there, not as a tourist, but as somebody that, try to emulate that. Also, if you're planning on downsizing, okay, are you going to sell your house to practice that and downsize? Probably not. But could you rent out an Airbnb, a smaller, let's say you're going from 3,000 square feet to 1,500 square feet? Could you test that out for a month or as long as you could? And maybe you currently go out to eat 2, 3 days a week because both you and your spouse are busy and your budget's gonna be 1 time a week. Test these things out beforehand. Okay. The next thing that I don't want you to do before you retire, I should say, I don't want you to retire without a plan. I think that's just a big mistake in a financial plan, and mea culpa, I was a financial advisor for over 20 years, so obviously I'm a big fan of plans, but here's why. If you don't have a plan, how do you know how much you can spend? And the risk, I'm not worried about you potentially running out of money, although that's very important. Nothing here is financial advice I should share. I don't know your situation, but I'm less worried about you running out of money. What I'm more worried about is you sacrificing unnecessarily, not spending money that you could have spent to have fun, particularly during the youth of your senior years, from the time you're 50 until the time we lose our health. So, in that period is what I call the youth of our senior years. For most of us, that's going to be, 50 to maybe 75. The reality is at 60 years old, most of us have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time remaining, and that's not a lot of time. And so I want you to have a plan so you know how much you can spend so you're not sacrificing unnecessarily. I want you to have a plan so you have confidence, because without confidence, you're not gonna spend that money, so I want you to have that. And then I also want you to run some what if scenarios and see, what happens if you're unlucky and the stock market crashes shortly after you retire? What happens if inflation, shoots up? so that you know that you have alternatives. And the reality is, as humans, we are adaptable. We're going to change as circumstances change. But I don't want you working longer than you need to. I don't want you unnecessarily giving up the youth of your senior years. It's one of the main reasons I started this YouTube channel is to talk to people about the importance of being thoughtful and deliberate about when you choose to retire. More on that later. So how do you come up with a financial plan? Well, you work with a financial advisor, or if you want to do it yourself, I urge you to not use Google Sheets or Excel. It's going to take you a lot of time to build your own spreadsheet. It's highly likely that somewhere there's gonna be a formula mistake in that. It just takes a lot of time, and why do that? Use software that's designed for you. The software that I like is called Bolden. It used to be called New Retirement. You can, sign up for it in the link at the bottom of the screen here or in the link in the description. I am an affiliate, so you'll be supporting the channel. Okay, the next thing, never do this, before retiring, and that is not thinking through your friendship and relationship circle. One of the biggest risks for retirees is, initially it's like, thank goodness I'm finally retired. I don't have all that pressure on my shoulders. And that's great. But at some point, if you're not careful, it can be easy to feel isolated in retirement, even if you're married, even if you have a significant other in your life, right? We need other people. Most of us need other people in our lives as well. So thinking through your friendships, thinking through the relationships, family relationships, and the reality is a lot of us for 20, 30, 40 years have gotten a lot of social interaction from our work. Now, it's also come with some negatives, pressure on our shoulders, not a lot of free time, maybe a boss that you didn't like, whatever it is, but it did have some positives. And for many people, one of the important positives is working with other people and having that social interaction. That's really important. The other thing is it's important to retire to something. We've all heard that as opposed to away from something. I call that your purpose. Now, a lot of people choose to put off retiring because they say, hey, so, I don't have something else I want to do 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And I say, having been a financial advisor for a long time and seen hundreds of people retire, as long as you have something that's 10 to 15 hours a week, I think from there you can build other things that give you purpose and meaning, but it is important to have at least one or two things that you think are gonna take up 8 to 10 hours a week, because 168 hours a week is a lot of time. And then as a bonus, I'll leave you with this one, which is think about when you retire. Let's say you say you're gonna retire next year. When next year are you gonna retire? A lot of people might say year end, they're gonna say December 31st. Well, what about that $20,000 bonus that gets paid out February 1st or January 15th? Do you think your company's still gonna give you that? Or maybe your 401k match? Or maybe the trip for you and your spouse to some nice Caribbean location for hitting your sales goal, whatever it is. Think through when you're going to retire. It's really important from a month standpoint. And then also think through how old, at what age are you going to retire? And that's a really important question. And it's why I made this video here that talks about why waiting to 65 to retire might be a big mistake. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.